Hi, everyone. Welcome to We Didn't Turn Out Okay. I'm here today with Lindsay Metselaar. She's the host of podcast We Met at Acme. And I'm really excited to hear today how you started that because she's also now, 9 years later, a mom. But first, what is We Met at Acme? So people know what I'm talking about.
Yes. So We Met at Acme started as a podcast first and foremost, and it's a dating podcast that has now kind of evolved to dating, marriage, babies, everything in one. And I started it when I was 27 and very single and dating in the city. And I was going out to places like Acme. And so that's where the name came from. And then the Instagram account associated with it is just like to promote the podcast. And we do a lot of polls and things like that on the story, on my stories for people to interact and,
Right.
feel like they are part of
The community.
the community. Exactly. Yeah.
And it's amazing that you were 26, you said?
27.
27 and had like the wherewithal to like think like that. I mean, I was like such a hot mess then. Anyway.
I feel like you were doing so much then.
No.
Really?
No. I got pregnant at 34. So no, 27 was not, I wasn't even married yet. But anyway, maybe we'll get to the hot mess stuff later.
I want to hear.
But either way, like you're single dating, right?
Mhm.
When you created this. And so what made you think like this should be a podcast? Besides that, obviously it's like such an entertaining world, which I'm sure was part of that. Like what made you feel like this needs to be shared somewhere?
Yeah. Well, at the time, there were no dating podcasts. It was really just like crime and news podcasts. And I felt really alone. And I personally needed a podcast to listen to make me feel better about that. And there was nothing. And so I was like, oh, maybe I need to create this podcast where we're talking about dating in the city. We're being very candid and open. And I was already talking about it all the time because it was my life at the time. And I was always the person in my group of friends that everyone went to for dating advice. And I found myself very single, dumped on my 27th birthday. And it all kind of came to me. And I was like, this happened for a reason. It's, so that I could talk about this and be helpful to other people and learn in the process.
It's amazing.
It was crazy.
I smiled when you said you were dumped on your birthday, single, and you were like, this happened for a reason, because we touched on a second ago, just this new idea of like things are happening for us and lead to kind of where we are today, sort of this trending thing going around where people are sharing about the butterfly effect and how these little circumstances lead us to where we are or have meaning.
Yes.
So obviously you felt like that had meaning for you to share, but can you share like what materialized from there that solidified that this was like the decision that should have been made then? Like, were there any, things along the way?
I think, so there were little things like I had, I had gone on a friend's podcast that was about something different, but I realized, podcasting was an interesting medium at the time. Podcasting wasn't on video. And I don't love being on video. Like I do it because I have to, but I wanted to just it to be my voice and me to feel like I was talking into like a void.
Right.
Not really that anyone was listening, that it was an intimate thing. And I felt really comfortable like that. And so that kind of gave me the confidence to do it. And then I always kind of was someone who put myself out there. I never really cared what people thought. So I figured that might translate to a podcast. And and then there was the breakup. And I think everything kind of led me to that moment. And then I agree with you. I think there's so much butterfly effect in the world. I do think everything happens for really, like I'm very woo-woo like that as well.
Yeah, I am not normally, but recently have been more so. And it's just like the universe keeps reiterating that like it's actually true. And I think one area that many people see it in a more obvious way is around what led them to meet their life partner. So it's something that I felt would be kind of, relatable to what you do. We Met at Acme as a dating podcast, and how you meet your person isn't usually as simple as like it's just I was set up, or through a dating app. There's always, like, what made you go on the dating app, or
Right.
how did you connect with the person that set you up? I feel like there's always, sort
Right,
of
like if you
these.
didn't send that text. Wait, so
Exactly.
how did you and your husband meet?
So we met. There's so much butterfly effect there. And it's actually like sort of a controversial thing that I haven't shared, because we met and neither of us were single. I actually was single, so I should backtrack. He was a freshman and I was a senior, and I was actually very single and a senior who was like, there's no one here to date. Like, I just broke up with my senior boyfriend, and so he has like a monopoly on the grade. I'd never even looked or considered anyone younger. And my now husband, Matt, was a freshman who moved into his then girlfriend's apartment, who went abroad to Australia. So he's like, was the city kid who was like, I can't live in the dorms. I've been like living.
Where were you guys in school? I just need
GW.
I need to visualize.
I know. I'm the same way. So he moved into her apartment when she went abroad to Australia, and it happened to be in my building. But when you like are in sort of the same scene as someone, you maybe cross paths on the street or in the elevator, especially, like you say hi or you smile. Like, he would not. And I was just like, he's so, like, I found that sort of intriguing. Like, he won't even look up. Like, he was this city kid that was like too cool for the dorm and ended up in my building. And so I'd see him, he wouldn't give me the time of day, but then he started, because his girlfriend was abroad, just hanging out more socially. And we were friends at first. He actually thought that I was interested in his best friend. I guess it was like my tactic at the time. And I knew he wasn't really available. Long story short, he like said he was available, that they were like doing their own thing when she was away. And so that's how we started. But there was like so many, how he ended up in the dorm, and then
Was that the truth, that he was
no,
available?
it was like a disastrous situation.
Because I just feel like so much PTSD from how people would be abroad when they would go abroad in their relationship.
Yes.
It's like going to business school when you're in a relationship. Unless they come with you, it never ends well.
Totally. Or like Acapulco. I don't know if that was your generation.
Yes, of course.
But if you're not with your, girlfriend, boyfriend in Acapulco, it's like, sorry, like.
They're with someone else. Yeah.
Right.
Except it's funny that I actually had a boyfriend when I was in Acapulco.
Not with you physically.
Not with me physically. And I was loyal.
Oh my God.
Crazy.
That is amazing.
I know.
And as I'm saying this, I always felt like I was like loyal. And so, yeah, we started this like relationship, and then it just was too deep. And I was like, one of my best friends is like, I think you're in love with this freshman who's not available.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, everyone's happily married.
But how did
now.
you even do that? I mean, first of all, let me just back you up by saying I think obviously cheating is wrong, but anything after college is very different than in college.
Yes.
No, like, and it's hard to say that to someone who's in college at the time because they take their relationships so seriously. But I have always said on We Met at Acme, anyone who cheats after college has issues. But before that, unfortunately, it happens more than we'd all like to think. And it's part of college. Like, college isn't real life. And, but I am so curious, and I know this is your podcast, so feel free to turn it around and tell me to shut up. But did it make it better for that person that you guys ended up getting married? You know what I'm saying?
Yes, but actually a little yes and no. But I totally agree with that so much. So I just want to say, just to give a glimpse of like who I was, I really felt like we met for a reason. He was my person once I like leaned into, okay, I am in love with this guy. But I was like, I'm graduating, you're a freshman, you're not available. Like, she's going to come back. Like, but I know I want to end up with him. So I'm going to like let this kind of play out. He got back with her. I was like, even if we like send each other a heart every month until like years down the line, this is like what I believed. Anyway, it didn't work out with that person. We started a long distance relationship, but I knew that like in college, like it's not realistic.
Right.
So I would micromanage his time. I'm like, you're going to Acapulco, like you can hook up with this, and this person. Or you're going to Australia abroad, you can hook up with these people, thinking it would be better. It obviously wasn't. It was the most like toxic thing. And so anyway, we have like a very new post-college relationship, but just to say that I believed that, like that you meet too young, I feel.
No,
when
it's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah. So maybe the butterfly effect there was just like kind of a little bit too soon.
I mean, the fact that you ended up getting married is a miracle.
Like against all odds.
It's amazing. It just shows like how good of a couple that you two are.
Thank you. I need to like ask you all about yours, but to answer the question, if it made it better for that person, I would say yes and no. She ended up marrying her best friend's boyfriend. So maybe we gave her the ability to like see past like people that are like off limit. I'm not encouraging that. But they're like happily married.
Yeah,
all
that
people
happens all
involved.
The time. Mm-hmm.
It did release Matt and I from like feeling bad. So I would say that like I hope, I don't know, that it made her realize that it wasn't about like anyone other than like you fall in love with someone.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully who's available.
Yeah.
And then like, yeah, the world just kind of takes it from there, you know, for better or worse. But yeah, I do believe that it sort of, once she experienced her own version of it, it made a little more sense to her, I want to believe.
Yeah, definitely.
But now tell me about you and meeting your now husband.
We definitely had a butterfly effect. Actually, before that became trending, we used to say invisible string. And the string for us was he went to high school with one of my best friends from college. And he went to Cornell with one of my best friends from high school. So he was in my orbit.
So you like knew of him?
Knew of him. He knew of me. I had heard his name before. He had heard mine. And then when we were both living in the city after college, we were 25, and I was in a relationship with someone whose coworker was having a big 25th birthday party. And funny enough, it wasn't at Acme, but it was right next door to Acme at that place where you would go if you didn't get into Acme. Do you know what I'm talking about? That like downstairs place?
Oh my God.
The Wren.
Yes.
Okay, so it was downstairs at the Wren.
I've been there, yes.
I don't even know if that still exists. And my boyfriend at the time took me to celebrate his coworker's 25th birthday. That coworker is Steven's best friend from high school.
Your now husband.
Yes, Steven, my now husband's best friend from high school. So I then ran into him at this party. At this party, he had just broken up with his longtime girlfriend that morning. He was in business school, but he was like back for the party because it was also around Thanksgiving. And they had just broken up, but I was there with my boyfriend at the time. So we kind of just like exchanged pleasantries. And
did you know then that they had just broken up? Like, did
no
he say,
idea.
Hi, how are
I didn't
you?
know anything about it. I don't even remember talking to him that
night. You knew later on that
he remembered talking to me. I assumed he was there because it was his best friend's birthday.
Right.
But I don't remember talking. And then years go on. I ended up breaking up with that boyfriend like probably soon after, but had nothing to do with Steven. Years later, we were both 29 and in Miami on New Year's. And I was in another relationship that was very much like ending, but we were in that friendship stage where we were holding on because we were so friendly, but it wasn't, you get it.
Yeah.
And I ran into him on New Year's, and he was really drunk, and he kind of like hit on me that night. And it was, again, crazy because if I hadn't stumbled onto the dance floor at that very moment that he did, right after the fireworks, and it was just like so crazy.
Also going to Miami, like in a dwindling relationship for New Year's, right?
Right, yeah. I mean, I was really there because my family was renting, and I wanted to see my nephew, but regardless, I was there, and he was there, and we stumbled onto the dance floor at the same time. He hit on me, and I was like, oh, my God, I forgot that he existed.
I was just kind of thinking that maybe you said to him, like, oh, my God, I forgot.
He's like literally,
Basically.
I was like, I can't believe someone as great as him is single.
Right.
And I think it was what I needed for me to be like, well, what are you doing in this relationship that you both know? It was mutual. It wasn't like I saw my husband and I was like, oh, go away to my boyfriend. So it was just crazy. And the person I was dating and I realized after that, not because of that for him, obviously, but because of that for me and, other things, I was like, I do need to end this relationship. This is not going anywhere, and I really care about him, but I got to end it. And maybe I should text Steven because he was hitting on me, and I thought he was really cute.
Like, you exchanged numbers on the dance floor?
Kind of. So I I also throw dating events and set people up, and I do a lot of dating related things. And so he was with a single friend of his, and I asked for the two of them to send me their number because we had an upcoming mixer that I wanted them both to go to. So I had his number, but it wasn't for dating him. But I was like, I might as well, use this. And so I ended up texting him, telling him when I was single. I think it was like a week after I'd broken up with my boyfriend, and the rest was like history from there.
Yeah. It's like also, I love hearing when people recap their stories that they usually have met more than like the time, but they might not remember, or like they were both at the same place.
Well, you go back and you see them in your photos from Facebook, and you're like, I can't believe we were both there. Like, that stuff is crazy.
To me, that's like such power of this like whole like believing in it being like meant to be. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I can even go back to before this, like him moving into my building, of me like just having different like signs of who he was, which as a senior, like you have no idea who the freshmen are. So yeah.
Also, as a freshman, you're such like a tadpole. You're not a real person. And your story really makes me believe that it's not about timing. Everyone kind of says, right person but wrong time.
Right.
No. If it's the right person,
totally.
You make the timing work. And that's exactly what you did somehow, some
way. And there were so many times where we were like, it was really rough. But it's like, yeah, when you love someone, like even if it's like tumultuous and toxic, like, yeah, we couldn't be like, meet you in 7 years. Like we just couldn't. We had to ride it out and then like kind of start a new, healthier relationship as adults. But yes, I'm glad that we did, because here we are. Which I'd love to now get into, like sort of like next step for at least us. I think many people can have babies before marriage, but for us, after we got married, we decided that we were ready to become moms. And what that looks like obviously is different for everybody. But for you especially, like building your career and platform on being single and dating, what did that look like for you? Like once you were like married?
I never thought that marriage and kids wasn't going to be my end story. I was always kind of hoping for it and manifesting for it. And so when I got engaged, I was like, first of all, this is great because this shows my listeners that my advice is like, if their end goal is also to get engaged, then like, hello, hi, like I'm telling you the right things. You can trust me.
Yeah.
But I think I really never thought this is going to negatively affect my podcast. If anything, I thought this is furthering legitimacy of dating advice. And when you get married, you don't stop dating. You're still dating your partner. And then when you have a child, you can also talk about things like your, sex after kids or making your relationship still a priority after you have kids. There's so much to be discussed. And even though I definitely went through that identity crisis post-baby, which I think a lot of moms do, I was like, I just need to continue being authentic to myself. And I'm not going to continue this podcast pretending I didn't just have a baby. Like, that would be crazy.
Yeah. Like one thing I want to bring up is sort of this idea of like imposter syndrome. Like I heard you say that like when you met Steven, right? I was like, am I saying the ex-boyfriend's name? Steven. When you met him and then you guys got married and all that, did you feel like there were times before that when you're like, it sort of like legitimized that like I gave good advice? Were there ever times that you were single that you felt like sort of imposter syndrome, like, oh, why are people listening to me? Like each breakup or whatever. Like, did you feel that?
Totally. In my last relationship, before meeting Steven that I alluded to before, I was giving advice that I wasn't taking. And I really didn't like that. I felt so inauthentic. And I hate not being able to be honest, but it was a situation where, there's two people that are involved. And you have to respect the other person. And I'm sure you've, now having a podcast, figure that out with your husband. Like, what can I say? What can I not say?
Totally.
But this person wasn't even my husband yet. He was just my boyfriend. And, things weren't great, but I didn't feel like I could tell people that. And so it was a big weight off my shoulders when I ended that relationship. And it was a really good thing, I think. Like, I was so scared. I was like, what if people think that I'm, giving all this dating advice and I'm in failed relationships? But now I feel it's the most important thing that I did, because now I can say, hey, if you're 29 and in a relationship that isn't serving you, you need to walk away.
Absolutely.
Because your husband's waiting for you on the other side.
100%.
And I have that experience to back it up. So I'm grateful for that.
And if anything, it's like failed relationships bring you closer to the relationship,
Definitely.
right? But it's hard to see that when you're in it and to like convince others when you're like, am I getting toward the relationship?
Yeah.
And then did you or do you experience some level of, I wouldn't say imposter syndrome in the same way, I'm just using that term, but sort of this like, how am I still, connecting with this same audience or this evolved audience, right? There's new single people. I'm sure your early listeners, many of them are not single now. When I'm in such a different mind state, or I mean, my view without projecting it, I can actually let me let you answer that first.
Yeah, well, I still am very plugged in. I answer all my DMs. I do dating consultations with my single listeners. I have 2 single cousins who I'm basically texting their dates for them. And so I'm still very much like finger on the pulse of what's going on in the single world. I have a few friends my age who are single. So I have that perspective. I have early 20s single. And I just think it's so important with anything that you're doing to be interactive with your followers who are especially, your listeners, because then you know what they want to hear. Yeah. And I have never, taken a step back and been like, oh, I don't care what anyone else wants to hear. This is what I want to talk about. No, I always make sure there's enough for everyone.
Yeah. And I think what I was going to say before is that like finding your person and dating, there's so much there that relates to so many other areas of life, right? Like, let's get into a little bit what we both relate to, which is fertility, right? Or struggling there. Like, similar to what we were saying is like, I won't want to say like failed. I don't think any like pregnancy journey has failed. I think it just brings you closer to like finding your baby or the one that is meant to be yours. And there's so much, I feel like that's just one thing that, finding your life partner can also relate to other things, whether it's like your career or whatever, getting rid of like what's not serving you. So I think that people in all areas of life can probably pull that from what you're sharing. But did that ring a bell to you when do you want to share if you're comfortable, like what you struggled with in terms of like when it came time to wanting a baby?
Yeah. So when I was one of those women that wanted to be pregnant on their wedding day after their wedding.
Really? Like it couldn't come soon enough?
No. Like I was so ready. I got married when I was 31, and I just wished that I had met my husband sooner. I had this vision when I was younger, like, oh, I'll be married and have kids at 30 and, be like a young mom like my mom was. Not that I'm not a young mom, but
yes.
You just have this delusional plan, which I tend to have a lot. And I got married and I wanted to start my life right away because I was so happy to be with my husband and I knew he was my person. And I went off birth control but I waited until after my wedding. And when I went off, I never got my period. And I was like, I was very delusionally optimistic. I kept thinking I was pregnant because I wasn't getting my period. And I wasn't. I just wasn't ovulating. And I couldn't figure out why. And I was impatient about it. But a lot of advice from medical professionals was like, just wait, give your body time to be off birth control and kind of figure itself out. And I knew something was off because I've always been very in tune with my body. And
how long were you on birth control?
I was on it for 17 years, which is crazy.
When we all share that.
It's wild. I had never gone off once, not even for a day. And I wish, and that's a whole other conversation, that I had gone off at some point to see what my body did, but I never did. And I took everyone's advice blindly about waiting till after my wedding. And ultimately, I ended up seeing a few different fertility doctors, and I found out that I had PCOS. And there's varying cases of PCOS, but mine meant that I didn't ovulate at all. So I didn't even have skin in the game to get pregnant if I wanted to. There was no egg dropping every month. And so...
But they confirmed you had egg reserves.
I had eggs.
Somewhere there.
Somewhere. I had an overproduction of follicles, which was like a string of pearls, kind of the PCOS thing. But they weren't necessarily good follicles. And I guess there were just so many that my body didn't know to release one. And so I didn't ever ovulate. And then eventually I did a few different fertility treatments, none of which worked. And then I, realized, and there was also some genetic stuff involved, that IVF was really our only option. And it was really hard because it wasn't covered for us. And we
even with all that,
the laws are really strict, and our insurance just wasn't that good. My husband works for himself, and so do I. And we just didn't have good insurance. And even with bad insurance, there's just a million rules around how to get it covered.
Yes.
And so it was a really crazy expense for us, and it was a crazy process, but we got very lucky in terms of it working on our first try. And our first, transfer. And I'm so grateful, just reiterating what you said, that I didn't get so, of course I got frustrated, but that ultimately I trusted the process, and I have my son, and there wasn't another embryo that I could have ever had because he was mine. And I don't know what I would do if it wasn't him.
Right.
And so you think that, but when you're in the moment,
you can't see that.
You're not ever going to see that.
Totally. First, when you said, I never heard of that, probably because you're in the PCOS, world of the string of pearls. And it just, made me, emotional for a second that, you got your pearl, right? I am sure it was meant in, this negative way that it's just a string and doesn't, drop. But, I don't know. I one time spoke with a psychic, and he alluded to a lot in my life. I see two pearls, or I don't know, the people that were meant to cross paths with, he referred to them as pearls. So I felt like there was just something that rung a bell there. And then when you said about trusting the process, that resonated so much with me, because when I was in my IVF journey, and it didn't just work on the first try, and there was so many different obstacles. I kept saying to my mom and husband, I was like, if I just knew that I could get pregnant, or that one day I'd be a mom, I could trust this. And it's sort of this whole idea that when you don't trust, you can't really manifest, right? You can't believe in it. And so many times it's you have to relax, and I believe that. It's just impossible, right? When you're if I relax, then I'm going to waste time. And so what gave you access to trust? When I'm sure you had moments where am I ever going to? But I just heard you say that you ultimately trusted.
It's hard to say, because I don't know if it's authentic that I did believe that in those moments, I think it was more just I trusted my doctor, and I knew that once we started IVF, at least we had a plan.
Right, you were giving it your best shot.
Right, at least I wasn't delusionally trying these, triggered ovulations thinking they were going to work, because they never were for me. And they might for someone else, but they weren't for me. And I think, getting a second opinion was very crucial for me. I think a lot of women, they feel that they owe something to their longtime doctor or whatever it is. And it's you are allowed to get as many opinions as you want. And changing doctors from a man to a woman, and I know that's controversial, and there's some amazing male doctors, but being in a woman's care, I felt more taken care of. I felt I just felt better about everything once I found my doctor. And it was more like I was trusting her.
Right.
I didn't know to trust the process, but I knew that she knew whatever the hell she was doing. And it's funny because when I talk about it now, because I'm in a journey again, and I'm going to share about that, eventually. But when I talk about it now and I'm like, yeah, it was so, easy the first time, she laughs and she's like, you're insane. It was not easy. She's like, your first transfer worked, but the leading up
Right.
to that was terrible. She's like, you don't even remember. We had to do this and we had to do that. And we had to, we didn't even trust that the lining was good enough. And we
Right.
just got lucky. And then you traveled to Portugal and we were so nervous. Like, but I don't even think of that
Right.
because you just don't think about that. You just think of your, pearl,
Totally.
as you said.
Yeah. It's like sort of like you have this like amnesia after
Yeah.
about like what it took, right? Because like
Mhm.
you got sort of the prize. And
Right.
then unless you have to go back, which thank you for sharing that here. That you're kind of on a journey again. What I heard from you was more that it wasn't necessarily like you trusted and knew it would happen. It's sort of like you gave up control.
Mhm.
I don't know if that was there, but I think so often when you're in it, you want to control, right? Like, I mean, I even remember at the beginning of fertility, I was like the taking temperature, like can't move before I take the temperature. Like,
Yeah.
it's like you're being told to control.
Mhm.
And then when you realize like that's not helping, which some it does, but I feel like once you get to a point of doing IVF, like you sort of have to give up control once you've like put all that you can in place, right? And I
Yeah.
just heard you say that you sort of like once you found the right setup, that's sort of when you sort of like let go or leaned in.
Mhm.
Which brings me to something that we related to a little bit when we talked prior to being on the recording. Sort of, I want to say perfectionism, which we didn't talk about, but type A, which I
Yeah.
believe is perfectionism.
Definitely.
I actually didn't say that to you yet, so I'm like springing it on you now.
No,
But what
it
are your
is.
thoughts about me positioning it as?
I couldn't agree more. It's definitely perfectionism in a lot of ways. I think it's control in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I think it's just, it's just wanting to be in the driver's seat of a crazy bus. It's funny because once I got pregnant, I was like, what can I control now? Because like I did that with IVF, like I controlled that, like woohoo, check
Right.
mark. What can I control now? And it was the delivery. I was like, I'm going to control my delivery.
Please share. What
I'm
did that look
going
like?
to make it the most idyllic delivery. I'm going to have this perfect plan, which was that I was going to, and by the way, this is the plan. I'll tell you what actually happened.
Right.
That I was going to labor at home until I was like 8 centimeters dilated and then go to the hospital, deliver, but I don't even need to get the epidural because I'm like already so dilated, and give birth, and it's beautiful and
Right.
it's wonderful. I'm listening to a playlist and I have a doula and like
Oh
it's
my God.
amazing. And I feel so good, and then like I look good the next day. Like that was my delirious birth plan. I think I was like, if I have the perfect birth and like I don't tear and like I do this, then it kind of makes the IVF neutral. Like,
Right.
like I struggled with that, but I'm not struggling with this.
Totally.
And I ended up being in labor for 18 hours before having an emergency C-section.
At home. 18.
At the hospital. Everything at the hospital.
Oh, like in labor, even at the hospital.
Yes. And I had a doula who was the most pointless person in the room because, like, what is a doula going to do during your C-section? It was just so different than I envisioned, but I got my son. And so I think that made me actually quite a chill mom, which is really funny because while I am type A, I have some surprising
chill factor.
Yes, like I would say my husband is a lot worse than me. Like my husband is, I always say he's the mom, but I definitely like I am type A, but there's a lot that I don't care about. But none of that is like a mess. Like I care about a mess. I want him to be on a schedule. I don't want to veer from the schedule. Blah, blah, blah. But I'm very grateful to not have the anxious, postpartum anxiety, that kind of stuff where I think, oh my God, is he in danger if this, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
But I'm still type A in a lot of ways. And so, but I know this is very also contradictory, but after my birth, I thought that I was going to be the kind of mom who wouldn't let anyone hold their child. And it turned out I wasn't at all. I was
What
like,
made you think you were going to be?
because my friend told me that her friend was like that. And I remember hearing it
And being like,
9
I
months
see myself
pregnant. And I was
there.
like, I could see that for me. And I was like, I was very much not judging her friend. I was like, I don't think that's crazy. Like, I could see myself,
Right.
being like that. And then my son came and I was like, you hold him, you hold him, you hold him. And so I don't know. I think that I am very type A, but I have some B qualities, but not enough to make me B.
And what does that feel like for you when you see these like B qualities? Like you just said, you thought you would be type A in this one example with holding the baby, and you realize, for sake of simplifying, that it's a type B quality. Does that feel like, do you not like that you're chill there? Do you feel...
I do like that. I'm never, ever going to dislike something that I'm chill about.
Right.
But I think that some type B people take it too far.
Right.
In that I'm like, you need to care if your kid eats or sleeps.
Do you mind me asking, just because I think motherhood brings up so much of our visions of our parents, do you mind me asking if your vision of your mom played into like the mom or the birth you thought you'd have or the mom that you are?
I think yes and no. My mom had an easy birth with both of my... Did you mean my actual mom or my like version of my... Okay. Yeah, my mom had an easy birth with both of us. So I think I was hoping for that. I mean, you think that you're going to have a similar experience to your own mom, and I didn't. And just in terms of how I parent, I don't think it's that similar to my mom, but I'm not actively trying to be different either.
Right.
I have a wonderful mom. She was just a stay-at-home mom, and I am not.
Right.
So I think that it's impossible to emulate that exactly.
Yes.
I think
And
there's
you
always going to be
recognize that.
differences. Yeah. And I think, again, like I don't remember what she was like
Of
when
course.
when
and
I
your
was
son is 15 months. We didn't
Like,
say that for anyone who
I have
doesn't
no
know.
idea. For all I know, what I think she was like is the opposite of what she was, and vice versa. She doesn't even remember.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Do you think how your mom was affects
I only bring it
you?
up more because, as I shared with you, I'm like on my own like personal journey with that. As a parent, yeah, I feel like when I lose it or yell or this or that, I'll like call my mom and be like, I never remember you yelling. Like, what? How? Why am I, whatever. I've had my own journey with that. It's more later on as they've gotten older of memories I do have, right? Like I don't remember as being a baby, but I remember being 5 and 7, the ages my girls are at. And so when I do lose it or like think of something, I remember being 5 or 7. Not everyone does. I do remember. And I'm like, how did my mom do that? And I know it was a different age and time, but I was just curious if like any of like your birth plan or like feeling chill about certain things or not chill, if it's anything to do with like just, your own mom or anything like that.
I don't know. I don't know. Have you ever heard you become one parent and you marry the other?
Yes.
I feel like if I see things coming out, it's my dad, if anything.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even like think to,
And like maybe that's not like a temper thing, but, wanting to raise my voice, not necessarily at my son,
right, but just
probably at my husband. And
but you recognize that, like,
I guess I
reminds me of my
recognize that.
dad
Like
a
I
little
think about some things that we experienced growing up, and I'm like, I definitely that would not be okay today, and that's never gonna happen to my kids.
Right.
But I think it's a mixed bag of like there were some amazing things and wow, I can't believe they took us on that trip or I
Totally.
can't believe they did that
Yeah.
with us. That sounds like a lot, you know, being in a league on Saturday, whatever it is, you know? And so I really like the title of the podcast. I agree with you. Like we didn't turn out okay, but I think it's more because you know, my mom also had PCOS, but it wasn't something that was identified back then. And so that's another thing where I'm like, if I had known, you know, then this and that. And so, and then why, like, why are we all struggling with fertility? I feel like there's a very big, like, what was I eating? You know, one big thing that my sister and I both talk about with my mom a lot is the fact that we didn't eat any vegetables growing up.
Like
literally not one vegetable. Like we ate chicken, cutlet, and pasta with butter every night for dinner. Every single night.
I like love that you have that memory though. I know
We
you're
loved
saying it in a
but-
way, but no, just that, do you know how much permission that's going to give you for every meal that you cook? That like
Yeah.
you did turn out okay health-wise,
Yeah,
unless
but
you're trying to
It
connect
took a long time. It took a long time. But no, there is definitely a connection to the fact that we did not eat normally. There were not healthy options. Like there's a
Right.
lot of things that when I think about the title of your podcast, we did not turn out okay.
Yes.
I think about like health-wise.
Right.
We did not.
And I honestly have gone back and I'm like, it's okay not to be okay. But I wanted it to reflect on like just how much of who we are today like comes from, let's just dig into where we're not okay. Even if it's like
Right.
something as small as like, you know, I thought my mom was this like perfect mom. And like now when I parent, I just always feel like I'm failing. Like, no, I've realized that's not the truth. Like she wasn't working. Like, you know, just we're different people. So that's what I meant. But yeah, like I think two things about the meal thing that I more meant, it also gives you permission to like know that like you don't have to be type A in terms of like, yes, give your kids vegetables, but sort of like you'll always know if you remember that she cut a corner, she dropped a ball somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know why she dropped that ball, but there was something that she had to choose. Like maybe it's like I can't learn to make the vegetable or
Yeah.
like I don't want to spend the money on whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Just it's going to give you permission one day when you're like, oh, he's been eating like the frozen chicken nuggets every day or something like that. I just think that that's just something, the imperfection of how we were raised, I feel like really actually serves us to an extent. We don't want to like give justification around things that are actually like really not
I love
serve
that.
us. But I heard you talking a little bit about like, you know, with your spouse. Obviously, your son is 15 months, so you were saying like maybe more if I like raise my voice at my spouse. Can you, especially because you gave all this dating advice, talk a little bit about what marriage looks like for you?
I will say our relationship health, like thermometer, has a lot to do with how much sleep we've gotten.
Yes.
And if we have gotten sleep, then we're very happy and loving with each other. And if we haven't, it's really hard. You know, my son had a stomach bug this weekend. And when my son is sick or doesn't sleep or this or that, it feels like there's tension. And we need to continue reminding ourselves that we're a team. And we do at the end of the day. But in those moments,
it's impossible.
It's impossible. It's so hard. And as I mentioned, you know, he's more type A than me. And so this past yesterday, we went to Brooklyn to visit my cousins and to go to this like fun activity place. And
what is this activity place?
It's called Space Club.
Oh, I've heard of it.
It's like you see the stars. And
yes.
And he really didn't want to go because he was like, it's a 40-minute drive, and what time are we going to get home? And he has to sleep by 7, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, let's just go. You know, I want to see my cousins, and I want to check this place out, whatever. We ended up going, and it was kind of a disaster. The place itself was great. But then after we went to go to this dinner with my cousins, and my son didn't like any of the food at the place. It was like all very spiced. And he had just had the stomach bug. And so what are we going to do? Give him spicy food on a stomach bug? Right. It was a disaster. And then we didn't get in the car until like 6:15 because we tried to get an Uber and this and that. It was just, we didn't end up getting home until 7. And that's when he usually goes to bed. And we're very strict about this like schedule. And we ended up, giving him a bottle of milk, and he threw all of it up onto me. And we were just like, my husband was trying to pull I said it was a bad idea.
I was just going to say, like,
blah,
did that
blah, blah.
come?
And I'm just like, fuck off, Like we
actually,
we actually had a nice time when we were there. Yeah, this sucks. Is he going to bed 30 minutes later? Yes.
Did he
throw up everything? So he'll probably wake up in the middle of the night starving? Yes. But like, it's okay. It's never going to be perfect. But that's where I sometimes envy the type B moms and like the fact because
that's showing type B right there. This entire like mindset.
Well, I tried to have a type B day, but it didn't work because I can never go full type B because I care about the schedule. So, for example, if I were type B, I would have let him sleep in the car on the way home or something. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And maybe he wouldn't have been nauseous when we got there and thrown up the milk. Like, type B to me, and I could be wrong, and you tell me, is like I don't care about his sleep or his eating. Like, he'll eat when he eats, he'll sleep when he sleeps. Type B to me is not on a schedule.
Like, you actually are pointing something out that like when you kind of gave in or had this like extra chill factor around this day or the type B version of you, because you were still like thinking of like the type A mentality, right? True type B is like they're not even thinking about that.
No.
Right? Like it's actually worse when you're sort of like trying to lean in, but then you're just like so worried about like the other stuff.
Yes. No,
and it was
it's
sort
horrible.
of like your husband was reminding you more of that.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Like when he said the whole thing, you were probably like, I know. You don't think I have that in my head.
Right. Yeah. No, there was I don't even know if I could ever be type B because of him and his type A-ness. But type B to me is like when you say to your friend, do you want to come to brunch? And she's like, oh, that's when my daughter sleeps. Yeah, we'll come. And I'm like, what? How?
I know. It's so interesting. I think, yeah, you're right.
I'm like, I'm the opposite.
Right.
Yeah.
Or it's like, I think there's a version that's like, that's during her nap. Like, can she nap on the go? Like, I think there's something about doing something like that and seeing that, like, what's worst case scenario and that, like, what happened to you yesterday is probably worst case scenario come true, right? Like, he threw up, whatever. But let's fast forward a little bit. Did he sleep?
Yeah.
Did you guys wake up?
Well, he woke up at 2:30 in the morning.
Did he have to eat?
We had to give him milk.
Okay, still worst case scenario, right?
Yeah.
And then what is today, the next day?
Yeah, he ended up going back to sleep until 7, but...
And is everything okay?
I guess it's still hard to say. Yeah, TBD. TBD.
Right, but I just think that's like data that helps you become not specific type, but just like the parent for your kid.
Yeah.
That's something that I've learned, especially because it ebbed and flowed so much for me. Like the type, I think I was like the postpartum anxiety, like type A.
Mm-hmm.
And then in order to find my way, I had to kind of like jump into the fire with things even when I didn't want to. Like I'll never forget, like it was like 3 weeks after Tess was born, or maybe 4 weeks. I don't know. My best friend, it was her 30th birthday at the time. And I was like, I can't go, obviously. She's like, well, why? Isn't Matt home? And this was me in the mindset of like, if I'm not there, it's like my husband's babysitting. Like I was still not in the mindset now, which is like we're both the parents. This was me, new postpartum, this like childhood expert. Like, if it's not me, like it's nobody. Anyway, I went and I had a colicky baby and of course had the phone open on the monitor the whole time. And my Tess was literally crying the entire time. Matt was like, I'll just never forget every time I looked, rocking her, looking at pictures, trying his best. I just had to literally be like, she's safe.
Mm-hmm.
But a moment like that, where I did it anyway, even though she guilted the shit out of me to do it, helped me know that, like, I'm not, like, shackled, right? Like, even if I need 30 minutes to, like, work out, to breathe, even if she cries the whole time, we're okay.
Yeah.
Right? So I feel like that's something powerful in like this whole scenario that you had that like even if worst case scenario happens, like you're equipped now
Right.
for times when you have to shift.
But that's what I said. I was like, he was obviously, my husband was looking at the negatives about it. And I was like, I'm actually really happy we did this because I want to take him out to dinner this summer.
Right.
I want to go to the beach a little later and I want to take him home later. And it would be nice to know that that would be okay.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And so it can't be as worse as this.
Right. Yeah.
There's no
and
way.
if when you're planning it and you're like, we did it the other time, and he's like, yeah, and look what happened, you could be like, yeah, see, it can't get any worse than that.
Exactly.
So I heard you talk a little bit about, in the future and wanting to like go out and using our experiences throughout motherhood to kind of let us know that things will be okay when we steer and veer. That being said, you've had to steer a little bit, right, in your career. I don't know if like what that looked like for you, but can you share a little bit about what that looked like for you and how you've kind of balanced this postpartum version?
It's really hard because half of my listeners are single and the other half are in the same kind of place as I am, married, having kids, wanting that, and having grown with me. And so it's like I always just envision the two groups with like picket signs. And I'm like, oh, I need to like make you happy, but I need to make you happy. And I'm kind of going back and forth. And so it's never going to be perfect, but I have to divide and conquer, essentially. And so I try to release, 2 episodes. I release 4 a month and I try to split it. So 2 episodes appeal to the single people listening and 2 appeal to the moms and, that kind of.
You don't say that, right? You just sort of, that's
no,
the
I kind of
subject
just
matter,
do it,
right?
yeah. But it's hard.
And while you're like sharing, like, on social or more like in real time stuff, do you think about that? Like, oh, this group of followers is going to be like eye rolly while this isn't?
I don't think that. But then I see like a comment that's like, I don't give a shit about this mom stuff. And I'm like, oh.
Do you respond?
Sorry. No. I'm like, what? Okay. Don't listen. Like I have to be authentic. And.
Oh, this could be a whole other episode.
Yeah. You got to realize that you're following someone who's a mom.
A person.
And I can only go so long to be like dating. Like, hi, I have a baby. Like, I have to be able to say that. And if I can't, then I don't know what to tell you.
Of course. I was even going to say that, like, even the people who are single, like, I know it's not a good assumption to make that they'll all want to be parents one day, but I was going to say that any content for their future is helpful content, right?
No, I think most people that listen to me want a family. And if they don't, then I don't know.
No, but just,
maybe they don't.
And I honestly think that when you get comments like that, it's funny because of what I do. I used to be like oh my God, I feel attacked and like that person in me. But then I realized, later on in my journey of motherhood that like comments that are kind of mean-spirited or just like that, or that strike something, are triggering for someone for a reason, right? That's probably someone who's like super single and like can't even think about that.
Of course. Yeah.
So,
you have to think of where it's coming from.
Yeah, you kind of like have this generous, more interpretation of it. But that being said, right, that's kind of hard to take.
Yeah.
Something that also helps me in moments like that is like picturing, I guess it's because I have girls, like what I want, how I would want them to react. I wouldn't want them to like internalize that stuff. And it's really helped me not.
I like that.
I say girls because we're obviously women, but for your son too. Like you don't want when he comes home, like someone said something mean to me for it to shift who he is or how he's going to behave.
Yeah, no, I learn a lot from the content that you put out around shaping your girls and helping their confidence and stuff. It's really nice. I really like that stuff that you share.
Thank you. It's funny that you say that. Not funny, but I have friends who have boys, and I'm always thinking, are they looking at this like, what is Jenny talking about? Like, because girls are just like
I learned so much, whether I have a girl in my life or not. It's just really interesting to see and like makes me think of what I was like at that age, and maybe I could have used that, exercise or whatever it is,
Yeah. And I would say that like, it can be helpful for any gender. I just mean that there's some friends of mine who like, yeah, when I'm talking about like the emotional, I just shared about like jealousy and stuff that they're like, my son's just playing soccer. Like, do you know what I mean? But, and I don't want to stereotype either, but I just mean so it's nice when, you know, a mom with a 15-month-old and a boy like can find nuggets in there that I hope are, helpful.
Definitely. Well, you also hear about, you know, a lot of the girls that are in school right now. I've heard parents say about other moms, like the mom is the problem, you know, the mom, the girl is being, you know, not nice to other girls. It's because of the mom. And when I think of something like the video you posted about jealousy, there's plenty of moms who would be like, well, she's ugly. Like, you know what I mean? Well, her mom is a bitch. So I don't care that she is a nice leotard. She's going to look like her mom one day, and that's not cute.
Oh my God, you're so
there's
right.
so many moms that like lean into it and are like, well, like she isn't cute. So you know what I mean?
Or like she didn't have that other thing you had.
Disparage a child or disparage a mom. And my mom is not perfect. She's definitely done that at some point, but she's also taken the high road of being like, we don't be jealous. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But you see how people's parents play a huge part in it. And so I don't know your girls at all, but I imagine that helps her continue to be a nice person, you know.
How we're responding.
Yeah, and just exactly.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I think, like it's also about the modeling, right? Someone said, and I didn't mean to cut you off. I get so passionate about this stuff. Someone actually said to that, the jealousy thing, you know, just to give context, you know, my daughter shared that her friend had a leotard, but how she said it was like she had this beautiful leotard. And so she said it in a way that I knew didn't feel good for her. And that's how I knew it was jealousy. But someone's like, what about teaching, you know, building up other people and this or that? And I absolutely believe that, right? Like, it's not that me focusing on my daughter and teaching her that she's enough or reminding her of that is not to help her build someone up. It was my version of building her up so that I'm modeling how she can build others up, right? Like,
if I were to respond and be like,
or if I were to respond and be like, you should be happy for her leotard. Look at all these leotards you have. That's not coming from a place of within. I'm sort of like shaming her, like, jealousy's bad. And you have to always be happy for other people. I don't feel that that's a successful way of helping a child manage jealousy. I think it's often the reflex, and probably why I feel like later on people can't cope with jealousy or like, and instead I was trying to attach. When I have a jealous feeling inside for her, it means there's someone like mean inside talking to me that like I'm not good enough because I don't have that leotard. And so I need to remind myself that I'm still good enough. Yeah. And that's how you reach like true happiness for other people. When like you're not in that, right? You see a pretty leotard, you don't think about yourself. And so it's trying to like detach things like that, right? Instead of the like, oh, well, her mom this or that, which also just reminded me how much like responsibility we have, right? Like,
yes, it's crazy.
Yeah, that like just
and it could be so easy. You know, maybe her mom is gross looking. It's so easy for you to be like, well, look at her mother. She's gonna look like that soon. Like, and that's also kind of funny. So you're like, maybe I should. And then you're like, wait, whoa, watch out. Like that is terrible to say to a kid.
Right.
You
like
know?
Mean girl grooming.
Right. Like maybe I'd say that to my girlfriend, but I don't need to say that to my daughter. Like that's for sure. And you would like this. And I know we're like going over time, so we can end on this note. But I was listening to a podcast where Gwyneth Paltrow went on recently, and she was talking about how growing up, her mom, Blythe Danner, you know, when she was starting to audition for acting parts, this other woman got this part that she really wanted, and she was like, "Oh, I can't believe like she got the part and I didn't." And her mom, and I'm probably butchering it a little bit, but her mom was like, absolutely not. Like, that is not how we speak about other women. Like, how great that she got what was meant for her, and I'm going to get what's meant for me.
Yes.
And, like, that's it.
I love that.
You know, that part was given to her because that was what was meant for her. And, like, what's meant for you? Probably something great, too. So, like, stay tuned.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I actually did see that and was like, oh, my God, she's so right. Yeah, her mom's like, don't do that. Yeah, not shaming, but just, like, don't go there. Like, yeah, I love that so much. Thank you for sharing that. since we have an abundance of things to talk about, and I just know people want to hear more from you, but we're out of time, where can people hear you, see you, follow you, if you can share that here?
We Met at Acme, wherever you listen to podcasts. I have the Instagram for the podcast, which is We Met at Acme. I have my baby stuff, which is We Met at Baby. And then I have my personal Instagram, which is Lindsay Metz, LINDZMETZ.
Thank you so much for coming
Thanks
today.
for having me.